check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
What's up, everybody? Dan Wiederer of the Chicago Tribune, working towards Week 1, Sunday Night Football, Bears-Rams in LA, a big game for the Chicago Bears traveling to SoFi Stadium, this time with fans in it. They have a lot to prove with a new quarterback, a new defensive coordinator, going against a Rams team that is more complete on really both sides of the ball in all three phases. It's going to be an interesting game Sunday night. Hold on a second. I hear a knock on my door. Who could that be? Can I help you?
Yeah, it was just I was looking for an Altoid. I've heard I can get one of those from this room.
We got rid of Altoids when COVID-19 snuck in. We don't get close enough to people for them to smell our breath anymore. So the Altoid purchases are down. Stock on Altoid, way down. Everybody, that's Rich Campbell.
Great to see you, pal. Thanks for inviting me in. I don't know how I ended up here.
You used to sit next to me in a lot of different places to talk about the Bears. Now you're in your house in Indianapolis. I'm in my dungeon in the suburbs of Chicago, and we're going to talk about the Chicago Bears for a little bit. It's great to see you, and great to revisit the conversation that we can have about this team.
And a lot to talk about too, right? I mean, always filled with storylines, exciting time, and for the Bears, you know, it just feels like the final act of the story in one sense, and then the beginning in another sense. And we'll get into that as we go here.
Yeah, I think so much of this, Rich, revolves around how do fans set expectations for the 2021 season, and far more importantly, how do the decision makers at the top of House Hall set their expectations and their bar, right? You need to have a clear-cut bar for the 2021 Bears to understand what qualifies as a success. I think they missed the boat on that in 2020. We went into the 2020 season with George McCaskey basically saying in week 1 that he wanted to see if this team was more like the 2018 version that won 12 games in a division championship, or more like the 2019 version, which was a major disappointment and stumbled to 8-8. And then they finished with the exact same record and they did nothing about it. And it led to this feeling on the outside like there is no clear-cut standard. There is no accountability when a standard isn't met. And there's never a target. And Rich, you know this as well as anyone. If you don't have a target, how do you know where the bullseye's at? That's where I struggle with the Bears overall. And that's what I think a big part of this 2021 season is about, is where's the target? What happens if it's not hit?
Yeah, you got to define success. You have to define success because everything flows from there, right? Your decision-making processes, the way you operate and stay focused on whatever your goals are. And what I think is particularly interesting about the Bears and the quarterback dynamic here, and then you bring the fans, the fan perspective into it, is that it's possible you have conflicting definitions of success. And that's where it gets really murky, and we can hash this out, right? Let's do it. Let's try to get to the bottom of this. How should success be defined? And you wrote a great piece for ChicagoTribune.com, the Sunday Storylines piece, which always is excellent. But putting it on George McCaskey, right, is the top of the organization.
He's the guy.
Set the bar, right? Set the bar. And you used their own words, right? You've got the receipts about how vague they've been about this, or, I mean, not saying anything at all, but really they've created a lot of wiggle room, and that's uncomfortable. That's uncomfortable if you're a fan, because you want to know what the bullseye is, like you said.
It's most uncomfortable because the track record tells you it should be uncomfortable, right? You spent your entire time on the Chicago Bears beat without covering a playoff victory. Hey, guess what? So have I. And now this will be my second season without you, going into season 9 without having seen a playoff win. And so you understand that there is scar tissue amongst the fan base. There's anxiety that they don't ever really know where the GPS is to find success. And when they do find it, they don't really know how to sustain it. And they've got to find that formula sooner rather than later. George McCaskey and Ted Phillips in January said they wanted to see progress and improvement. Those were their words 8 months ago. I asked Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy what they define as progress and improvement. They had different sort of discussions on what that is. Ryan said it's about winning games. It's about winning more games than last year. It's about winning playoff games. That's a high bar for a team that most outsiders figure to be around a 8-9, 9-8 kind of team this year. Matt was a little bit more vague and said, look, we want to feel like we're growing every week. We want to feel like we're establishing an offensive identity, which has not existed for 3+ years. Why do we feel like we're playing complementary football? Those are good goals. To me, so much of this comes back to how do you establish long-term stability at the quarterback position, right? It's the conversation that we've had forever, and they still haven't established it. Well, now you found this gift in April. You got this $100 bill that was laying on the sidewalk in Justin Fields, and you picked it up and you said, I like this free money that was laying on the sidewalk for me. I picked it up. It's in my back pocket. Well, now how do you spend it? And so to me, 2021 is all about how you develop Justin Fields to be able to take over your team in 2022 to position it for a 5, 6, 7, 8 year run of consistently being in a division championship race, consistently thinking about longer runs in the playoffs. They have to be thinking that big while thinking much smaller in 2021, because I feel like if you go 7-10 and Fields looks like the real deal, you can breathe a sigh of relief if the offense looks like it's not one of the bottom 7 offenses in the league.
Right. I agree with everything you said. There's just a lot to unpack there. So as we talked about what we were going to discuss on the show here, underlined caps lock on my notes is stability at the quarterback position. That would qualify as a success for the Bears season in the big picture fan view, right? And just organizationally overall. Well, the guy who's going to establish that isn't going to play according to plan. And I think by all expectations, he's going to play at some point and play a lot, right? But the plan is not to put him in for now. So if you're Ryan Pace and you're Matt Nagy, you success for them includes, I need to be here next year. You know, because what else is there if you're not employed next year, right? So how do you establish that stability, tend to the short-term goal of winning games, and, you know, you got to make the playoffs, right? I mean, if Andy Dalton's winning you games and you're going to make the playoffs, okay, right? Like that's ideal for them, because they're probably not going to make a change if you make the playoffs and you win a game and all that. But what are you getting out of Fields? Now,
right.
The Mahomes comparison will always be there because of Matt Nagy's involvement in Mahomes' redshirt rookie season. But you have to consider that a unicorn situation until further notice, right? So that's, to me, where I see the conflict.
So 2 branches in this road here. First of all, I'm going to tease to a statistical nugget that Brad Biggs is going to have in his Monday morning 10 Thoughts column, which is always a must read in ChicagoTribune.com. Brad went and crunched the numbers and found 20 quarterbacks drafted in the first round between 2015 and 2020. Okay. 10 of them saw their head coach fired after their first season.
He talked to me about this in Nashville when I saw him there.
It was a kind of a mind-blowing figure when you consider it, because you're talking about impatience, right, on one end, and you're talking about organizations that clearly don't have the right things in mind when you're drafting a quarterback and not setting him up for long-term success by making him start over after his first season. We saw it with Mitch Trubisky.
I was going to say, by the way, one of those guys is Mitch.
Yeah, right. And there's 9 others, right? And people can go find that list, and they can read Brad's column on Monday. But Rich, this circles back to me to a topic that is, I think, interesting, because there has been a lack of clarity from the top, which is how we started this discussion, on what exactly Matt Nagy needs to do to keep his job heading into 2022. And if that lack of clarity is influencing his decision to play Andy Dalton longer than he otherwise would have, because he feels like Andy has a better chance to avoid rookie mistakes, better chance to avoid game-losing mistakes that then give you a better chance to get closer to 10 wins. If that's the magic number that he set in the back of his head, to keep my job, I got to get 10 games, in the W column, and if I don't, I'm fired. Well, now that may lead you down a different path than you otherwise would have gone down if you feel like Justin's long-term development is best served by playing right away, gaining experiences, gaining this library. And so this is what I want to ask you.
Okay.
I think there's a difference between a can-win season and a must-win season, right? A can-win season is when a coach sees a team that says, hey, we've made the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years. The defensive nucleus is here. I think we can make the playoffs and we can win this year if we get steadiness from the quarterback play. And in the short term, it's Andy Dalton. A must-win season is, I need to do everything I can to keep my job. 2 very different dynamics.
And how would you describe this one?
I don't know. And that I think is why the angst is out there, because that lack of clarity from above leaves you in a guessing game. And if it leaves Matt Nagy in a guessing game and it leaves his coaching staff in a guessing game, that's a problem area. And it would be a troublesome but not surprising problem area if the Bears left that in a vague and ambiguous situation that ultimately leads them to make decisions at the most important position on the roster in ways that are influenced by factors that shouldn't be taken into account.
Yeah, the situation that comes to mind on this point is all of the positivity and optimism surrounding Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert. Ask Anthony Lynn how he feels about Justin Herbert right now. You know what I mean?
Loves him.
Anthony Lynn is the offensive coordinator of the Lions now. Lost his job despite a fluke circumstance that thrust Herbert into the starting role there, right? In week 1, the guy played well, seemingly establishes that stability at the position, at least inspires confidence at the position from the way he played as a rookie. The head coach still didn't survive, right? Still didn't survive. Now, okay, you could argue that that's from a number of different factors. The point being, the coach is replaceable. The good quarterback is not. And if we're asking what other traits does Matt Nagy have to survive if a situation like that Justin Herbert situation unfolded, well, is it his play calling? Has that inspired the confidence? No. Is it his ability to relate to the locker room? Well, probably yes in that regard, right? So you're going to have to sort through all of this and kind of feel how it goes. But the bottom line is that the player and the way the player plays is what's going to make fans feel good about the future. And George McCaskey has admitted, he is a fan. He is going to want to feel that success and that optimism around Justin Fields. And then whatever else happens, I think other examples show it's a bit up in the air.
There's also a worry in Chicago because, as we've talked about many times over many years, there seems to be a habit from the front office and the top of the organization to prioritize personality traits over production when doing evaluations, right? When doing performance reviews. And so I think there's a sense that they really like Ryan. They really like Matt. They want to see them succeed. But yet when they have failure after failure after failure, there's no standard and there's no accountability for it. And so they have to establish that in some regard. Look, I've got the Bears finishing 9-8 this year. I have them finishing outside the playoffs. That's okay if you get to the end of the year and you say Justin Fields looks like the real deal. He looks like the real deal because Matt is putting him in positions to take the offense up a level. And this team now is positioned to make the run that we talked about at the outset for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. That to me is success. It doesn't require double-digit wins and it doesn't require a playoff appearance.
But I look at that Chargers situation and you could feel that about Justin Herbert. They didn't finish with a record as good as what you've predicted for the Bears, but
7-9.
But you have to evaluate that coach quarterback pairing, right? That's everything. We talked about this when Mitch was drafted, and it's just like 101 in the NFL. So Chargers decision makers decided they liked the QB, but not the coach. Well, what's it going to feel like when we get to mid-January, in Chicago? We don't know. Let's see. But man, that's interesting, right? Because so much has to play out to formulate that picture.
The crazy thing, Rich, is the euphoria from the spring, from April and May and June and July, has been replaced by worry, and the Bears haven't even played a game. And so, is
that just because that Fields is not the starter? I mean, is it simply because of that decision?
Yes. So 100%. And it's also because Fields not being the starter doesn't allow them to conceal all of the organizational flaws that we've talked about forever that had everybody up in arms at the end of last season and after they signed Andy Dalton and all the way up until draft night of the first round. Those flaws still exist within the organization, even though Justin Fields is here. And so that, like I said, the euphoria has been replaced with angst. And now the Bears head to LA for a primetime showdown against a really good defense. Good luck, Andy Dalton. Good luck, Matt Nagy. We'll see what happens after Sunday night's primetime showdown between the Bears and the Rams.
Well, then the question becomes, how long's the leash for Andy Dalton, right? Because if it starts to go south and then the pressure to put the rookie in amps up. I mean, you see this all the time. You see it every year, right? And then self-interest in these hot seat situations takes over. And then are you counting on sound decision-making? Are you seeing the full picture, that type of thing? We'll see. I mean, the Bears fans went through it in 2017, right? I mean, it was so easy to see coming that bye week, the opening window there to make the change from Mike Glennon to Mr. Trubisky. You could see it a mile away. It played out that way. Mitch played. They changed the coach because they liked the QB. They didn't like the coach, right? I mean, you've seen this so many times before. Let's see how it goes. It's exciting time. And bottom line, really, Justin Fields represents hope, and they didn't have it before they found that $100 bill on the sidewalk.
Great conversation. This felt like old times. Let's do it again soon, huh?
Let's do it next week.
All right, sounds good.
Have a great trip to LA, man.